Hey guys, welcome to the weekly movie recommendations with Sanket. So for tonight's episode, I have invited a very special guest. So his name is Anirudh Bhardwaj. So Anirudh, actually, you may know him from last Sunday's podcast episode, which he talked about some great stuff. And in this episode, also he will be recommending a show which is directed by Martin Scorsese and a movie. So do check it out. He'll be recommending some great content.
Hey guys, this is Anirudh, and today I'm going to review two of my favorite film stroke series to help you guys pass some time in this lockdown type situation that we find ourselves in again. Uh, Bear in mind, this might be a little hard to find online because they're not the most famous. But if you do find them, they will definitely be worth your time, that I can guarantee. So, without further ado, let's get into it. The first film I want to talk about is a film called Tristram Shandy, A Cock and Bull Story. Uh, this is a situational comedy. I love comedies and I love, uh, you know, uh, a little bit of intelligent humor. And this is exactly what this film is. It's the lead on the film is Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon, who are two very well-known British comics. You also have appearances from other really well-known British comics, such as David Walliams, Stephen Fry, all big names in the British comedy scene. The film itself is based on a book. It's a postmodern classic called The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy. Uh, this book is essentially about the main character, Tristram Shandy, who tries and documents his life and writes a book about his life, but fails. And the main theme that goes through that is that he fails because life is too rich and too complex to be captured entirely by art. Essentially, talking about the chaos in life being the central theme of that book. So what the filmmakers have done is they've taken that central theme and they've taken the characters of the book and they've sort of applied it to the filmmaking process in what, in my opinion, is an absolute masterstroke. So, in essence, if you really want to understand what this film is, the way I like to explain it is it's a film about making a film based on a book. So, by that definition, you can see there are layers to this film, and the directors have masterfully explored these layers and perspectives uh, while still in a sort of comic setting. Uh, Firstly, I would 100% anyone who's a fan of offbeat narratives, non-linear narratives, this is 100% the film for you guys. Because not only is it non-linear in terms of chronology, it's also non-linear in terms of perspective, wherein essentially it has to three layers of perspective. The first layer being almost like a third party seeing from out in terms of the actual filmmaking process, uh, wherein you as a third party as an audience sort of see everything from a bird's eye view of the actual making of the film as well as the actual film that is being made, if that makes any sense. The second perspective is as if you were part of the film crew. So there are parts of the film where you, as a viewer, almost feel like you're part of that crew that's making that film. And the final perspective is obviously as a viewer of that film being made. So, in terms of script writing and narrative sort of structure, there are very few that have films that I've seen, especially in this comedy space that sort of has such a varied and decentralized narrative. And that is one of the things that makes this film truly, truly special. Um the film essentially is Steve Coogan plays the main character, which is Tristram Shandy. He also plays his father, Walter Shandy. Rob Brydon plays his uncle. As I said, there are appearances by other great comics in the British comedy scene. David Walliams, Stephen Fry, playing different roles. But primarily, you watch the film from Steve Coogan's perspective through these three layers. So, as a third party, there's sort of interview kind of shots, which make you feel like you're almost watching a documentary. At sometimes almost like a BTS documentary, where Steve Coogan talks to the camera, breaking a fourth wall and all of that stuff. But it doesn't feel like he's breaking the fourth wall because the setup is almost like a documentary at that time, and then very seamlessly they sort of in move into the second layer wherein they're just having conversations among themselves and you're almost just there like part of the crew, which is also sort of BTSE and documentary style. And it sort of moves again into this cinema viewing experience, and it sort of moves back and forth, and it's you think it's a jarring experience, but it's actually you almost don't even notice it till you put on a more critically analytical hat and sort of try and study it, and then you realize, oh, that's what happened over there. But it's beautifully sort of handled in terms of the narrative. I keep talking about the narrative about this film, but it's because it's very rare to see a narrative handled the way they handle it in this film, and I absolutely adore it for that. In Obviously with Steve Coogan, Rob Brydon, they've done quite a few films now together, and their comic timing is impeccable. It is a situational comedy, so in that sense, you don't expect the standard uh, Americanized punchlines or through the film. It's the situation that sort of creates the humor and the bizarreness. Also, personally, as a filmmaker, part of the comedy also comes from the realism that they've uh, sort of dealt with the filmmaking process in. So, to me, certain things resonate as a filmmaker as well. So, personally, I enjoy that as much, if not more. Another interesting facet of this film is the multi-dimensional characterization uh, that it sort of plays with. For example, Steve Coogan will be Tristram Shandy at one point. Then Steve Coogan will be a sort of over dramatized, spoiled star kind of Steve Coogan at another point. And then he'll be the actual Steve Coogan as a third person giving an interview to camera at another point. And almost every character goes through that pendulum swing as such. And I find that extremely entertaining and intriguing as well. The humor that they use in the film is that typically British, dry, ironic, sarcastic humor, and just because of how dry the delivery is, uh, it's almost enhances the humor of the situation. It might be an acquired taste for some, but for me, it's my favorite kind of humor, and I really enjoy it. Uh, even if you feel that might not be your cup of tea usually, I would still encourage you to give this film a try, because if ever a film was going to change your opinion about British humor, it was probably going to be this one. And I recommend every single one watch it. My next recommendation is actually a show. It's an HBO drama series that came out in 2016 called Vinyl. It was executive produced by Martin Scorsese and Mick Jagger. And Martin actually went ahead and directed a couple of episodes of that show as well. It's set in the 1970s, and it's about the record business in America at the time, and this central character called Richie Finestra, who's trying to navigate his record company through the changing times uh, of the American music scene at the time. And this show is unhinged, it's uninhibited, it is completely raw, it is completely grunge, and I absolutely love it. They have held no punches uh, in terms of visualizing what the 70s were like in America, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. They have held no punches in visualizing how the record business worked and works, wherein it's a sort of a dog eat dog kind of world with no real honor in that sense or code. And it is just the more, if you like uh, sort of uncensored, just extreme excess sort of visuals, this is a show for you. Uh, the things that stand out to me specifically, one is the production detail. It is just the most painstaking production I have seen in a very, very long time, at least in the world of TV as such. Right down to stuff like the buttons on Richie Fenestra's jacket were period, even though that period wasn't all the way back to 1870. We're just talking about the 1970s. But everything in that film was painstakingly sifted through in detail, and that comes across. The colors used and the colors they used in the color correction as well uh, were very vintage 70s. It's hard to explain uh, in words without getting too technical, but I'm sure you know what I mean when I say vintage technical. And it's just that that attention to detail that the production has. Another thing that stands out a lot is how they've explored human psychology and different aspects of of human psychology, be it about the psychology of business, be it about the psychology of excess, and uh, just the development of human psychology in general. Also, it goes hand in hand with sort of character development and characterization, which is also amazingly detailed. And the way they develop the characters, you feel like you know that character personally, and you can sort of predict how the character is going to react in a certain situation. And they've done that for not one character, not two characters, but the entire central star cast that they have developed and painstakingly sort of taken you through that psychological evolution. Another thing that stands out about vinyl for me is how larger than life it feels. And for me, that's very important because the 70s were a time of excess. It was a time of being essentially larger than life. And that's captured very well visually by two DOPs that were associated with the show, David Franco and Reed Moreno, who are giants of the cinematography world, and they've done a fantastic job with this show. Another thing that stands out for me is the treatment of its main character, Richie Finestra. A lot of the times in shows and in films, the story is told through the perspective of the main character, wherein here the story is told and the main character happens to feature. The perspectives are varied. Perspective comes from his wife, him, his business partner, a few others, people that he's employed. There are multiple perspectives that the story is being told in. He just happens to feature, and I find that an interesting way to treat a narrative. In terms of star cast, Bobby Cannavale is in it, who plays the main character. Olivia Wilde plays his wife. Ray Romano plays his business partner. James Jagger, Mick Jagger's son, is also in it. The star cast is pretty substantial, and they also have a lot of guest appearances. But mainly, the reason I fell in love with this show and the reason I'm recommending it to all of you is because of how uninhibited the storytelling is, how raw the storytelling is, um, how cinematic and dramatic the cinematography is, and the absolute production detail. Also, the soundtracks of this show are absolutely smashing. I don't think I've seen too many shows with better soundtracks in the last 10-15 years. Uh, and it's an absolute shame that it's been killed after one season. But it is honestly one of the best shows I have watched ever. And that's going some. So, yeah, I do recommend you guys check it out. Do let me know what you think about it. And happy watching. Cheers.